everyone! It's been well over a year since I've done a video with commentary, so I'm gonna try really hard to not sound quiet and mumbly. In spite of doing acting and voicing YouTube videos for years, I'm still bad at talking to an audience. Anyway, as you can see from the title, I was super lucky to be given an opportunity from GAOMON to review one of their tablets. I worked with Miss Cindy, who sent me the brand new S630 model. I've been wanting to get a spare tablet for a while since mine is starting to wear down with age, and I also thought it'd be fun to share some drawing tips. I've included some timestamps so you can skip around to the parts of the video that would be most helpful or interesting to you. First, the unboxing. Huge thank you to my boyfriend for helping me with the filming. I'm big stupid and forgot I need to use my phone for drawing with the tablet, so if you notice the quality change, it's because we had to switch to his phone for recording. The tablet is very small and light. It's 5 by 3.2 inches and 6 ounces. There are cute doodles on the surface, but it feels completely smooth to the touch. Drawing on it with the pen actually feels very nice and comfortable. Although it is, surprisingly loud. It also has 4 programmable hotkeys and 2 programmable buttons on the pen. Aside from the tablet and pen, it comes with a manual, a micro USB, replacement nibs and a clip for replacing them, and an adapter so you can use it on your phone and your PC. Getting started with it is very easy. When using it with your phone, you just plug it in and you're ready to go. No drivers needed. When plugged in, a cursor appears on your screen that follows the pen tip relative to the tablet. When you move it away from the surface, it disappears. It's a great tool for drawing, of course, but it can be handy just for regularly using your phone. One of the recommended uses for it is gaming. I'd demonstrate that, but I don't really use my phone for games. The only fun thing I use it for is putting pictures into FaceApp and editing them until it no longer recognizes them as faces. Here's a completely unedited picture of me in real life, and here's a picture of me with the male filter. Don't let your girlfriends outside today, fellas. When using it with your PC, you do need to install the drivers and set it up, but it's also super easy. When setting it up, you can specify how sensitive you want the pen pressure to be. The default settings were perfect for me because I tend to draw very lightly, so having a highly sensitive pen was perfect. I was blown away by how much more sensitive it was than my old one. You can also configure the 2 pen buttons. I set them the same as my old one, with one as right click and the other as middle click so I can use it to drag the canvas around while drawing. Here, you can configure the hotkeys on the tablet. By default, they're set to zoom in or out on the canvas and change the brush size, but I set them to my most used keyboard shortcuts. Having my hand over the buttons on the tablet rather than my keyboard was shockingly more comfortable and just a bit faster, and I no longer have to hold a claw hand over Ctrl-Z. You can also back up your settings so you can restore them or import them to a different computer, which is something that definitely would have saved my life back when my last 2 hard drives broke and I lost everything on my old computer and had to manually restore everything. I emphasize how easy the setup is because I've had numerous issues with previous tablets being overly complicated and time-consuming to establish the settings, which would really mess up my workflow. It would take half the day to fix if my computer crashed and I lost everything, or if, for example, my computer does a routine update and I also lose everything. Anyway, now that we're done with setup, let's start drawing. For now, I'll focus on drawing tips, then move on to what I think about the GAOMON S630 in detail. I just want to say first that these definitely aren't rules because there are no rules to drawing. You can color outside the lines, you can shade with black, you can use the airbrush for everything. All that matters is if you're having fun and you like what you make. Unless you specifically ask for criticism, don't listen to anyone who tells you you're drawing wrong. That's my first piece of advice. These are basically just some techniques I picked up that have made drawing faster or easier for me. They may not work as well for you, but are worth trying if you struggle with any of these things like I did. Also, these tips should be applicable in any digital art program, but for clarity's sake, this is what I'm using. Something that's helped me retain consistency in the sketch versus the final result is sketching with the same thickness I line with. I've always sketched using the pencil tool in every program, but I sometimes line with a much thicker brush for a stylized effect. I used to get so confused when my drawing would look completely different after I lined it, until I realized my sketch was basically in a different style entirely. So if you line with a thick brush, sketch with a thick brush. If you line with a thin brush, sketch with a thin brush. Also, try using different line thickness depending on the size of the canvas and how close the subject is to the camera. I tend to use a bigger canvas when animating, so it helps me to bump up my line thickness just a few pixels so it's not as tedious to line and color everything. Another tip for lining is to try different colors. I tend to start my lines with black so it's easy to see over the sketch, then change the color of the line art afterwards to suit the color scheme or light source. It can also add more depth to your drawing if you use different colored line art in different areas. For example, if there's a really dark color, make sure the line art is darker than that color. If the color is really light, use lighter line art in that area. This, of course, is only if you're looking for a more natural shading and lighting look. Don't be afraid to experiment with line art colors. Solid black lines also look great. Using different colors is also important for shading. I tend to pick shading colors depending on the environment, but if it's a figure drawing without any background or environmental context, I just pick something that looks good with the color scheme. It's important to note that different surfaces reflect light differently. I tend to use dark blue or brown as my go-to shading colors, but they won't suit everything. I've noticed that skin especially will look more natural if you tint the shading to be similar to the character's skin tones. Adding more red usually does the trick. Now, here's a super easy trick I started using not too long ago to improve my cell shading without making it take forever to do. First, go ahead and lay down the cell shading as you normally would. Then, take the eraser tool and set it to fuzzy, increase the size, and greatly lower the opacity. Gently erase the shading closer to where the light source might be so it has a nice fade to it. Apply the same settings to the airbrush tool and use it further away from the light source. Now your cell shading will have a bit more depth to it with just a few more seconds of work. You can also do this with lighting and coloring. This has helped me immensely in making commissions look nicer without my client having to wait weeks for me to finish their drawing. Those are all my tips for now. If you have any questions or suggestions for other art topics you'd like tips on, feel free to leave a comment. I'll answer your questions to the best of my ability or possibly make more videos like this one in the future. Anyway, on to my thoughts about the GAOMON S630. The thing I immediately noticed and appreciated was the sensitivity. It has over 8,000 levels, which I think is twice the standard amount, and it really shows. But it's also easy to edit that if you'd prefer it to be less sensitive. I was initially a bit worried about the size since it's even smaller than my already small tablet, but I've come to find it suits me in my drawing style since I work on small canvases and tend to be more detail-oriented. Unless you're more used to a huge tablet or one with a display, it's really not an issue. If anything, the portability of it is a huge plus. I have a laptop and no desk at the moment, so it's super convenient to move from room to room depending on where I want to work, and I can imagine it being very easy to deal with if you travel a lot. I also really appreciate that it came with the adapter. It's super easy to switch it from my PC to my phone in just a few seconds. Speaking of me not having a desk, I do most of my work at my dining table, the top of which is literally just one big plate of glass, so my last tablet would just slide all over the place like a hockey puck. The GAOMON S630 has grips at the bottom, which I never realized how badly I needed. Lastly, I know I've said this 1,000 times already, but I can't get over how easy it is to start using. Like I mentioned, if you use your phone for drawing, you straight up just plug it in and are immediately ready to go. I've never properly used my phone for drawing until I was given this tablet, so I thought it'd be too difficult for me. But it wasn't at all. It of course took a little bit of getting used to, and might even more so for someone who isn't used to using pen tablets, but I can't overstate how accessible it is, especially given the fact that it's only like $30. Overall, it's super affordable, great quality, convenient, and easy to use. This would be a great tablet for pretty much anyone, but it would be perfect for someone just starting out drawing on either their phone or their PC, or someone who changes workspaces a lot. I also think it would make a great gift. I can't thank GAOMON enough for giving me this opportunity. I also want to give a big thank you to Miss Cindy for working with me and dealing with how inexperienced I was with this sort of thing. I look forward to working with GAOMON again in the future. Thank you once again to my boyfriend for filming this video with me, and to all my viewers for helping make this happen in the first place. I just reached 6,000 subscribers and I'm so grateful for all your support. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!